So welcome everyone to Tune Up Tuesdays, the journey series that helps you get road ready for the year ahead. This is our second segment, and I am super, super excited. This is one of our favorite presenters always. It's Sam Dolezal, Dr. Sam Dolezal from our human resources area. And Sam is the Wellbeing Officer at UBT. She knows a lot about many, many topics. Today's presentation is over tuning up your indoor workouts. So what to do when the weather gets rough? How do you take that workout indoors? Just settle in, get comfortable, and Sam's going to tell us how. Take it away, Sam.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Do you want to hand off the host control so I can get my screen shared?
I believe I did.
Perfect.
Took me just a second.
Nope, you're good.
Okay. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, so we should be seeing a nice winter landscape. And if you're in the Lincoln, Nebraska area, in a few days, this might look like us. So this is not uncommon when we start to hit the kind of January, February time of year where we start to see the single digit temps. We've already experienced that this year, along with the snow flurries and the ice. So how do we continue to be active as we head into both a new year and understanding that this time of year can be a little bit harder to head outside when we're not seeing sunny and 55-degree temps. But before we dive into the meat of our presentation, I do want to, again, just do a slight introduction about myself. So as Kelly mentioned, I'm the Wellbeing Officer here at Union Bank and Trust. And because we are meeting virtually, I do like to share just a little bit about myself. As you can see on here, we have 2 dogs. We spend a lot of time with them. We also like Husker volleyball. So any fans out there, we're fans as well, along with just being active, whether that's traveling, doing the 5Ks, just kind of everything and anything. But this presentation would not be possible without Union Bank and Trust. So Kelly, along with these 3 gals, Angie, Christy, and Debbie, and this presentation has no conflicts of interest. So if you're thinking, okay, what exactly are we going to be covering today? What we're going to be looking at is really those, as Kelly had mentioned, those indoor workouts. What is going to help you set yourself up for success when it comes to being active inside? If you're an avid walker, sometimes those kind of cooler temps can be like, you just enjoy those outdoor walks, those bike rides. Again, all of kind of those things that we enjoy can kind of transition out during the winter due to that ice, cold, and then snowy. So we're going to talk about the whys and whats of a workout, along with equipment, kind of how to either increase the challenge of your workout or decrease it, along with, hey, what are some other ideas? Again, to just kind of get those creative juices flowing. Now, as we talk about physical activity, before we start any physical activity program or activity, make sure you consult with your healthcare provider to simply say, okay, what is realistic for me? Are there any conditions or limitations I need to be aware of, along with what is ultimately a fit for you? So that's really our starting spot. Again, just want to make sure that we're all aware this is where we need to begin if we're starting physical activity or an exercise program. But as we walk through today, we're really going to see it kind of flow in this fashion. So we're going to start with kind of that foundation of what exactly is physical activity, what's movement, and then what are the factors that make it up, along with then, okay, we understand that base. Let's talk about a warm-up, a cool down, the space place, equipment, changing the challenge, and then I call it safety first, even though it's at the end. But again, some of those considerations that we just need to keep in mind as we talk about being physically active. Okay, so let's jump in here. First part, what exactly is a workout, physical activity, movement? We tend to use these words interchangeably. You may call it, oh, I'm going to go for my daily walk, or I'm going to go do my workout, or I'm trying to be more physically active. Again, we tend to use them interchangeably, and that's kind of how we'll use them today. But realistically, all of these kind of have 3 main components. First one is the actual activity that you're doing. So biking, walking, running, swimming, whatever you're actually doing, could be vacuuming, could be gardening, the activity you're doing, plus then the intensity that you're working with. So essentially how hard you're working. If you're running, the intensity may be higher. If you're walking, the intensity may be lower. If you're gardening, the intensity might be somewhat moderate. And then the time you spend doing it. So let's kind of put this into an equation here. Maybe you're a runner who works at a pretty high intensity and your time spent doing it is about 20 minutes a day. Maybe your activity is walking and your intensity is much lower, but you do that each day for 45 minutes. Now, all of these factors then turn into that physical activity, movement, exercise, workout, however you want to coin your movement for the day. And again, we kind of talk about this as a broad scope because again, everyone looks at physical activity a little bit differently. Maybe your daily movement is your walk, and that's just your movement, and that helps you feel good both mentally and physically. Maybe you have a workout that you go to, you go to a group fitness class at your local Y or something, and that social component is very important to you. So they always look a little bit different for folks, and you may coin the terms a little bit differently. But again, these are kind of the main three factors that we need to keep in mind. Now, then the question always becomes, okay, I understand this, but how much am I actually supposed to get? And the CDC, Center for Disease Control, has these kind of general physical activity recommendations. And as you can see, it really starts with young children and then moves into that kind of children, adolescents, then we move to adults, and then we move to older adults. And it looks a little bit different for everybody. Now, there's a few things I want to note with this slide. And the first one is underneath adults and older adults, there's an asterisk underneath there and some teeny tiny print that says aim for the recommended activity level, but be as active as one is able. And so with that in mind, again, that conversation with your healthcare provider can be very beneficial to help you set unique standards and goals for yourself, depending on medical conditions, physical activity levels, any other limitations you may have, along with setting yourself up for success. Now, as you kind of look between adults and older adults, you'll notice that there's really only one major difference, and that is in the older adults. We're looking also for activities to improve balance. And as you can see, we're not necessarily looking for anything maybe really out of left field. As you note here, standing on one foot, you think, okay, I can more than likely do that in my own home without any special equipment. Again, kind of thinking through that, but these are the recommendations that are set forth by the CDC. So this kind of gives us this platform. Now, as we look at this, you're like, okay, I understand what makes up physical activity then, kind of those components. I know what the general recommendation is. How do I know it actually falls towards these numbers? So again, we're aiming for at least 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity activity, plus 2 days a week of strengthening exercises that work our muscles. So what's considered what? So on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll notice moderate intensity and vigorous intensity activities. And these would fall into your 150 minutes. So we're seeing, okay, walking briskly, swimming, bicycling, and you see in the vigorous activities, jogging or running, swimming laps. You'll also notice though that there's activities in here that maybe we don't think of really as physical activity, such as gardening, general yard work, home repair, all of those things. Again, it's, as we mentioned earlier, it's the time you spend doing what activity at what level of intensity. So these are towards your 150 minutes. The list on the right are the muscle strengthening activities. So those include kind of your tried and true traditionals, working with exercise bands, resistance bands, body weight exercises. And then you see in here, there's also some yoga, some Tai Chi, and then gardening and carrying groceries. And I'm like, whew, when I carry in groceries, I know I'm getting a workout. Along with, again, gardening. That's something that I really enjoy doing during the summer. And I can tell you, yes, it is very much a workout in its own right. But again, kind of a combination of all of these things, again, build towards that physical activity recommendation or unique goal that you have set for you. So what we're talking about is the activity that we'd be doing. Again, there's those three factors. So now we're going to move on to intensity. And again, you see on here, moderate intensity and vigorous intensity. And now we're going to talk about exactly where do those come from. What we're going to be looking at now is just a chart that shows you from sedentary to high intensity. And what I really want you to focus on is the highlighted words at the bottom. So you'll see house walking. So again, just getting up, walking to the fridge, walking up the stairs. That's kind of that 2 or light intensity. And again, you can see for some folks, it may be light intensity and maybe moderate intensity, depending on what makes you unique. If we move to walking, you're going on a walk, you're going to walk the trail, you may see, okay, it might be light intensity, it might be moderate, it might be a little bit more vigorous, depending on, again, the time spent doing it, exactly what the activity all entails. Walking on my treadmill is a lot different than walking through Pioneer Park. So again, it just looks a little bit different for everybody. But again, on the far right side of the screen, you see running, and that's a very high intensity. But this helps you kind of just shape that intensity is really on a pretty big spectrum. And that some of the things we do, such as sleeping, sitting, watching TV, can be sedentary, and then we move into light, moderate, and vigorous. But for most individuals, we probably want to float between that 4 to kind of 8. I know personally that's where I like to live. Most of us are comfortable doing activity within there. Again, once we get into high intensity, or even in some cases at vigorous intensity, it can be pretty taxing. So how do we actually measure intensity then? How do I know where I'm at? And there's really 2 different ways to do this. You have absolute intensity. This is truly how hard your body is working. So this is physically how hard your body's working. Relative intensity is how hard you think you're working. And sometimes these can be 2 very different numbers. Somebody may say, hey, I'm not working very hard, but their body is working very hard. Or, I'm working so hard. And really your body is keeping up fairly well and saying, I'm working at a pretty low level here. So what are some different ways that for us, we could measure intensity that are kind of realistic for us? Again, knowing that, hey, we're going to do this in the comfort of our own homes. We're not going to go to a laboratory. We're not having a ton of special equipment. What can we use to measure intensity? One of the first ones is heart rate. So this is how hard your body is working. Again, that absolute intensity. And heart rate looks a little bit different depending on age, any conditions you may have. But maximum heart rate typically decreases as we age. So you can see at 20, kind of the general consensus is max heart rate is right around that 200. But then when you are about age 60, it drops to about 160. So again, looks a little bit different for everybody, but good number of smartwatches, fitness trackers, they are all able to somewhat accurately measure heart rate. So this might be a good way to help you determine intensity in terms of the absolute intensity. When we talk about relative intensity, there's what is known as rate of perceived exertion. So again, how hard you think you're working. And there's 2 different scales. So you have the Borg RPE, this goes from 6 to 20, and then the modified RPE, this is 0 to 10. Most of us are familiar with the 0 to 10 model, but you can then see, okay, this is probably what I'm feeling in terms of a breathing. Again, most of us are probably living in that like 2 to maybe 6 range, right? I know personally, I don't like to work at the 9 and the 10. That's pretty hard. But I also know if I'm going to do a workout, I probably don't want to be at a 0 or a 1. I probably want to live somewhere, again, between that 2 to 6. That's pretty comfortable for me. And you can see where max heart rate may fall. So again, kind of giving just those ideas about how we can measure heart rate and how we can do the intensity piece. Now, what if you want to increase intensity? If you're thinking, well, most of my workouts now are at that kind of 0 to 1 or maybe 1 to 2, and I want to move it to a 3 or a 4. How do I increase intensity? You can do that in a few different ways. And we'll talk more about how to change the challenge as we move into this presentation, but you can add in stairs or hills. You can take a new trailer space to add variety. Anytime we change something, that's changing the intensity because your body has to adapt. So for example, you go from walking on your treadmill to go outside and walking on trails. That's an adjustment your body has to make to, again, keep you moving, and that may change the intensity enough. Other suggestion is essentially move the intensity up and down throughout your workout or walk in this case, but the block walk, increase the intensity to a 6 for 1 block and then decrease to a 3 for 2 blocks. You can repeat this. You could do this with mailboxes. Walk this mailbox at a steady pace and then to the next mailbox, kind of bring it down and just kind of up and down with your intensity there. Again, you could do that based off heart rate. You could do that based off RPE. You could do that just, okay, I'm going to walk, at a really good tempo till that next mailbox, and then I'm going to slow down to a walk, then walk at a really good pace and then slow down. So again, that doesn't have to be super measurable. It's just ultimately, where are you trying to go? What are you trying to accomplish? Okay, so we've talked about 2 of those factors. First one is the actual activity itself. Second one is the intensity. And then third one is time, which seems pretty straightforward, right? The recommendation is 150 minutes. Again, that disclaimer in there of aim to be as physically active as you can. The strength training piece is also incorporated. But at the end of the day, when we talk about time, it ultimately also plays on those other 2 factors. So intensity and the activity that you're doing. You may be able to walk at a moderate intensity for hours, but swimming at a vigorous intensity, you might only be able to do for 20 minutes. So the time piece does matter, but it also plays into those other 2 factors, and they really kind of work as the triangle. They all need to play well together. You get one that's kind of out of sync, and you might notice this workout is too easy, this workout is too hard. So that's kind of why I left it last, to kind of be that tie-in. But again, if you're thinking, okay, I have an hour to work out, do I want to do something harder for a shorter amount of time, or do I want to do something a little bit easier for a longer period of time? So those are the 3 factors kind of in the nutshell. But before we go any farther, I do want to talk about a warm-up. And I say this jokingly, when we get into the colder months, I feel like sometimes it is harder to get warmed up. We just kind of want to jump in and do our workout because it is cold, especially if we're going to go outside. Now, again, we're focusing mainly on the indoor workouts, but knowing that there are times where we do have nicer weather, but it still may only be 40 or 50 degrees outside. So why do we need a warm-up? Why is this really important? And it does 2 major things for us. First one is it gets the whole body, heart, lungs, your muscles, all warmed up and primed for exercise. So that's one. The second piece is that it slowly does this. So we don't go from 0 to 100, it slowly moves us up. And I put the photo of a car on here because many of us can relate to that during the winter time, where maybe we proactively start our car and let it run for a few moments. That's the same way with the warm-up, is we don't start our car, let it run for 2 seconds and then shift, right? A lot of us are like, oh, that's kind of hard on a vehicle. And that's the same way with your body, is it needs a little bit of time to get everything warmed up, get the muscles moving, get the heart pumping, because going from 0 to 100 can be kind of taxing on things. Now, one of the questions that I've heard from folks is, well, I kind of use my workout as the warm-up. Is that okay? And we're going to talk about really how the warm-up works. So this slide does a nice job of kind of showing you what exactly it does. Is you can see across the bottom is time. So 0, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And vertically, you can see the temperature. So the red line is body temp. The green line is muscle temperature. And you can see in the first 10 minutes, we see a pretty good uptick in muscle temperature. So you're doing your warm-up, your muscles are getting warm, they're being fueled, and then you slowly see body temp climb as well. And again, ultimately, that's what we want. We want to get warmed up. We want our bodies to be prepared for physical activity. But again, if we went from 0 to 100 and we hadn't even hit the 10-minute mark, it's like, whoa, we might be asking for trouble here. So again, warm-ups are really important. Now, it's like, okay, I understand that, Sam, but I don't know what to do for a warm-up then, because again, I usually just jump into my workout. So what should I do for a warm-up? There's a couple different recommendations out there. I'm just going to start with one. First one is it should be something that does the major movers of the body. So upper body, lower body, core, and then again, slowly get your body ready for physical activity. You could say 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's a little bit different for everybody. But again, as we saw on that last slide, it does take a little bit of time. So saying, okay, I'm going to warm up for 2 minutes, I'm going to jump into my workout, know that you may need a little bit more time there. I personally really like the rule of 5 and 5, and that's 5 minutes of cardio warm up and 5 minutes of dynamic stretching as a warm up. So 5 minutes of the cardio warm up could be walking, a light jog, maybe just kind of biking on the spin bike, something to, again, get your heart, lungs, muscles moving. And then the dynamic warm up would be a little bit of moving, stretching. So think heel toe walk, arm circles, squats, lunges, rotations. And when I'm working with clients, I just say kind of a combo. So do your 5 minutes of cardio activity and then 5 minutes of a dynamic warm up. Now, again, we'll talk through if you're looking for specific, what should I specifically do? I have XYZ limitations, or, hey, I'm really looking for something concrete. We can talk through where to get those from. But again, this would be a general starting spot for you if you're thinking, I really don't know what to do. Now we're going to shift actually into the workout itself. Again, we're talking about indoor workouts here. So we've talked through what actually makes up activity. How do we change those 3 factors a little bit along within the warm up? Now we're into the workout. And when we're talking about workout, we really need to talk about space and place. And I put these together because we found over the last few years that with the pandemic, plus with kind of the ability to do lots of things from just about anywhere, is that your workout space may look a lot different than it did 5 years ago. It might not be in a gym anymore. So these are really open-ended questions to kind of help you determine what's the fit for you. And that is, are you working out at home or at a fitness facility? Where are you actually going? Are you going to your basement? Are you heading to your living room? Are you heading to your local YMCA? Do you go to a specific fitness facility? Again, that looks a little bit different for everybody, but where are you going? Are you comfortable working out solo or prefer a group fitness class? Ultimately, do you like that social aspect? Do you like having the instructor piece? Do you prefer to walk into a facility and do exactly what you want to do? And you're fine doing it by yourself. Again, it looks a little bit different for everybody. Maybe you like a mix, but know kind of who you are and what you enjoy, because this can factor into it. Are you an expert who can build your own workout, or would you like to have some instruction from either an instructor or a personal trainer? I teach fitness classes here at Union Bank, and I have some folks who love having the autonomy to do kind of their workout their way with very little instruction from me. And others, when I give that kind of choice, they're like, Sam, just tell me. I just came here to do exactly what you told me to do. So just knowing yourself, again, what are you comfortable with? And then finally, are you needing to consider any limitations? And I say that with, hey, maybe your knees just aren't a fan of squats. Or, hey, you had shoulder surgery a few decades ago and you kind of want to work through that, but know that you got to be gentle on that shoulder. Again, there's other medical conditions as well that can be impacted by physical activity. So knowing, hey, is there anything else I need to consider when we talk about space and place? And I'll talk through that a little bit more in a minute as we start to talk about equipment. So talking about equipment, again, depending on the space and place you're within can really determine ultimately what your equipment options look like. If you're at home, you may have a few pieces of equipment, or if you're at a facility, you may have hundreds, if not thousands of options when it comes to equipment. As you can see on the screen, I just have a few kind of common ones. So on the top left, you have dumbbells. Bottom left is a stability ball. Bottom right are kettlebells. And then top right is a yoga mat. But again, you could have a combination of more than just these. Again, just highlighting a few options here that maybe you might be familiar with to kind of set the stage as we start to talk about your equipment options. As I mentioned, every facility has lots and lots and lots. And your home setup may too. Again, it may look a little bit different. You may not have the square footage that a facility would, but maybe you have exactly what you want. So kind of going back to those space and place, what are you looking for? Do you want the instruction from a group instructor to kind of help make that decision that, you know what, I would really prefer to go to my water aerobics class versus walking on my treadmill for 30 minutes? Kind of, again, what are you looking for? What do you want to walk away with? So depending on your goals and capabilities, that different equipment will serve you in different ways. I will recommend that if you're interested in learning more about A, either what's available, or B, how to use it, I would connect with a personal trainer or a local fitness facility to get you connected. Personal trainers do function solo, or they can function as a part of a facility. So again, you may be looking for somebody to just kind of write you a workout and help you, but you're fine working out at home, or you're thinking, I really want to meet with somebody at my facility, but you do have both of those options. Okay, let's talk about home equipment options. And I just laid out a few that are, one, easily to get. You could order these off Amazon, Play It Again Sports, Head to Shields, Dick's Sporting Goods. You have lots of options there. They're also accessible, so many of us can use them. And then finally, you can do a lot with them, right? That adds the variety. So I'll just kind of go around this screen here. Starting on the left side, you'll have resistance bands. These are fairly affordable. You can make them whatever you want them to be. And I say that as far as you can change the resistance, buying new bands. You can get the circle bands, those are in the bottom left, or you can get the straight bands, as you can see on the top left. But I really like these just because you can do so much with them. You can throw them in a suitcase, they're lightweight, they tend to be fairly inexpensive. And again, it gives you a good starting spot. On the bottom right, you'll see the yoga mat there. I really like mats because, again, for me, especially if I'm working out from home, I don't necessarily have a dedicated space to work out. So that yoga mat, even though it might only be 10 square feet, it gives me 10 square feet of a fitness facility in my mind. So it also gives you a little bit of cushioning should you have to kneel or put your hands on the ground. Again, gives you just kind of that visual that, hey, I'm in my workout, this is what I'm doing, along with that little bit of extra cushion. And then in the top right, dumbbells, kind of a tried and true. They can be a little bit pricier than, say, the resistance bands, but again, can be a solid investment for you if that's the direction you want to go as far as adding weight. Now, when it comes to home gym equipment options, you're thinking, you know, I really don't want to buy anything. There are numerous ways out there to kind of substitute, is the way I'll call it. Folks have used soup cans. They've used water bottles with handles. I was actually thinking the other day, I was like, a gallon of milk weighs about 8 pounds. So if you had some empty milk jugs and filled those up with a little bit of water or even sand or gravel to, again, give you weight, they usually have pretty nice handles. But again, there's other ways to kind of substitute if you're thinking, I'm not really quite ready to invest yet. And again, if you're like, I really just want to go to my fitness facility, I'm not interested in investing in home equipment, that's okay too. Just knowing yourself and ultimately which direction are we going to go. So that's kind of how to set ourselves up for the workout itself. When we talk about equipment, we're going to come back to the workout when we talk about the challenge piece and different ways to incorporate different workouts in. But I do want to talk about the cool down. So once we've moved through our workout and we're going to move on to a cool down does the opposite of the warm up. It allows our body to, again, move from that, okay, we're working really hard, back down to a sedentary kind of sitting pace. Again, going from 100 to 0, hitting the brakes really hard is not necessarily great for our bodies either. So again, I really like that 5 and 5 rule. It's pretty easy to remember and gives you at least a starting spot for a cool down or a warm up. So with the cool down, you would do 5 minutes of cardio movement. Again, think we're cooling down. So we're not necessarily getting harder, we're getting easier. So walking, cycling, again, slowly moving us back down, and then static stretching. So before it was dynamic, again, moving stretching. Static stretching is where we stretch and we hold the position. So a side bend stretch, a quad stretch, a hamstring stretch. This is usually the type of stretching that we're familiar with, where we stretch, we hold it for so many seconds, release, and then move on. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of information here. We're going to keep rolling though. I did mention this earlier in our presentation. What if you want to change the challenge? Okay, you've been doing your workout from home. It's been great and it's gotten too easy or it's too hard. How do we change it? And really the first question is, do we need to increase the challenge? Do we need to increase the intensity, or do we need to decrease how hard it is? And to decrease it, you can kind of do a few different things. You can decrease time, so the time spent doing it. You can decrease intensity if possible. And kind of the last recommendation is creating a routine. And as I mentioned earlier, anytime we add variety, our body has to work to adapt to that variety. So when we create a routine and we do something kind of the same way every day, every other day on some sort of schedule, our body adapts to it and it gets easier. So if you've ever noticed, hey, I walked to the mailbox, and then the next day I walked to the mailbox, and you walk to the mailbox so many days in a row, pretty soon walking to the mailbox is pretty easy because your body has adapted to doing that. So if you want to decrease the challenge, again, create a routine, and then you can also decrease the time and intensity. So if you want to increase the challenge, it's gotten too easy. What can you do? Increase time, increase intensity, add variety. Again, opposite of that, creating a routine. When we add variety, body has to adapt to new stimulus. So changing the challenge again can look a little bit different, but go back to those three factors. We have activity, so what we're doing, intensity, how hard we're working, and then time, how long we're doing it. You can change one of those three. You can change two of those things. When I'm talking with folks, I usually recommend just changing one. If we change too many things, we can make it too hard really fast, or we can make it too easy really fast. So start by changing one, see how it goes. And again, you can continue to change, but if we change too much, it's hard to know exactly where we're sitting. Okay, so just a few more slides here that I want to mention. Safety first and last and all the time. We always want to be cognizant of safety. Again, whether we're in a facility doing our indoor workout or we are at home working out, we need to be considerate of our safety and the safety of others. So I'm going to utilize the SMART planning structure, again, just kind of giving us a few things to kind of note here. And I'm going to talk from kind of that workout focus. So the first one is S, and that means specific. What is your plan? What are you going to do? Walking in kind of like unsure. I'm going to go walk on the treadmill, or I'm going to go do this. And it's like, okay, but for how long? And at what intensity? And kind of what's your plan there? Because again, walking in empty-handed sometimes isn't really helpful for us, and can, again, we can work too hard or we cannot work hard enough. So kind of having at least some outline of a plan. Now you may walk in and say, okay, I was going to walk on the treadmills, but all the treadmills are taken. So I'm going to go do this instead. And that's okay, being able to adjust, but having some sort of plan can be very helpful. M is measurable. Again, walking in empty-handed is not always ideal, but sometimes it can be helpful to have the measurables around them. I'm going to walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes, or I'm going to go to this water aerobics class at this time, or I'm going to go down to the basement and do a 20-minute yoga video. Having those measurables, so when you hit them, you know that you're able to be done. Again, when we talk about specific, going to the YMCA, there's lots of options there. Are you going to do a class? Are you going to walk on the treadmill? Are you going to ride the bike? Are you going to the water aerobics class? Are you going to shoot hoops? Again, kind of knowing what you're doing and then adding that measurable, and then attainable. A is for attainable. If you are not somebody who likes to run, saying, oh, I'm going to go to the Y and I'm going to run on the treadmill for an hour, or I'm going to go down to my basement and I'm going to run for an hour, is that attainable for you? And is that something you want to do? Again, I have this conversation with folks. Just because your neighbor in the street has run 17 marathons doesn't mean you have to run them too. It's okay. Just what do you want to do and what's attainable for you? And that leads us into realistic. Again, on that same note, what do you really want to do? Do you really want to run, or do you really just want to walk? Do you really want to do the water aerobics class, or is your best friend doing it and they want you to go with them? Which is great every once in a while, but if it's not necessarily something that fills your cup, is that ultimately where you want to invest your time? And then finally, talking about time, T equals time. And when we talk about SMART planning and SMART goals, this is usually, I want to achieve XYZ in this date. When we're talking about it here in terms of safety, I'm talking about in terms of we can really overexert ourselves pretty quickly. And so again, how long do you plan to be somewhere? How long do you plan to work out? What's your kind of consensus there when we talk about time, because again, it's one of those major factors. And then do you have those goals as well? So again, when I was talking about safety, it was more of that creating a structure and a plan with your workout so that we don't run into injuries or, you know, we overexert ourselves or we get to a spot where, hey, I'm really not feeling good because I pushed it a little bit too hard. But this helps kind of set that standard of, hey, let's reel it back in. Let's make a plan, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and then having that time piece as well. Okay, so I encompass a lot of material, a lot of kind of thinking spots for you. In the last 40 minutes, I do want to highlight a few Lincoln specific offerings to, again, give you different opportunities when we talk about what's available. If you aren't in the Lincoln area, many communities have offerings like this. You may have to check around to see what is available. But again, just to kind of help you realize that there are lots of options out there. So the first one, again, this is Lincoln specific, is Aging Partners. They actually have a really sweet setup. They have a fitness facility that actually has a certified personal trainer so many days a week that you can utilize. If your age is 60 or plus, there's a $10 suggested monthly contribution. And then if you're under age 60, it's a $15 fee. There's no contract required. So they also have group fitness classes. They have these across Lincoln. So again, if you're thinking, you know what, I want to do a home workout, but I would like some direction on exactly what to do, this may be a great spot to connect with that certified personal trainer. Or again, if you're thinking, I really want to go to a fitness facility, but the cost can be kind of burdensome. Some of them can be really pricey. Maybe that $10 a month or $15 is a better fit for you to kind of get started and see, is this really what I want to invest in? You can find more information on their website or by reaching out to them. And again, they have a whole host of fitness classes as well. So if you're thinking, I want to try yoga or I want to try something, this may be a place to start. Another option, and this is a little bit more summer focused, but they do have a lot of great options in terms of trying things out, and that's Lincoln Parks and Rec. So they offer free group fitness classes, water aerobics, yoga, canoeing during the summer at their different parks. This is known as Play in the Parks. And this is a photo at one of the area pools. This is one of their water aerobics class. I've done their water aerobics class before. I think they're great. They have super instructors with a lot of different modification levels. And during the summer when it's been hot, it's great to get into the pool. But again, another option if you're thinking, again, as we move into summer, you want to change it up, do something a little bit different, this could be an option. And then finally, there is what is also known as LNKTV Health. And I want to talk a little bit deeper into this because this would probably be more suited for those who are working out from home, where they can do it recording and live. They do yoga, tai chi, different balancing activities. So again, for those who are 65 plus, if you're thinking, yep, that's kind of what I'm focused on. They also have dance. You can get this through your cable TV. Again, you can tune in on cable or you can find recordings on their website. But I know sometimes it's hard to know when we're working out from home exactly what to do. So again, this would be a great starting spot where you kind of have that instructor who's able to walk you through. They'll tell you exactly what you need from equipment. For many of these, it's minimal equipment, maybe a chair, maybe a mat to kind of get started. But again, those three are really just recommendations of there's lots out there. Again, these are community focused programs. Fitness facilities have their own programs, personal trainers have their own programs. So as you dive into your indoor workouts this winter, again, I gave you lots of kind of ideas to kind of super start your workouts, along with if you're looking for additional inspiration, you can reach out to these different folks. But as we dive into questions, comments that you may have, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly at this moment to see what's kind of come through our chat.
Well, hi there. That was great, Sam. Thank you. Okay, first question is, can you recommend 3 very basic exercises that I can adapt as my workout changes?
That's a great question. 3 exercises that I would recommend that are easy to kind of add variety to. First one would be a squat, where you can start with a body weight squat. And for some folks, that even begins with sitting in a chair, standing up, and then using the chair as kind of their safety, right? And then squatting down over the chair, standing back up. And you could very easily kind of transition that to a point where maybe you're holding a little bit of weight. Maybe you're doing multiple squats without the safety of the chair. That would be exercise 1. Exercise 2, I would say, would be a bicep curl. So if we're thinking, okay, I'm holding something and I'm curling, you could do that with soup cans. You could do that with no weight. You could, again, do that with resistance bands if you wanted to, or if you're in a fitness facility and they have dumbbells, or you have dumbbells at home, you could do that. So squat, the bicep curl, and then the last one I would do, if you're able, is a plank. A plank is essentially where you're holding your body in a horizontal position. You could start by doing that on a wall, essentially just holding yourself this way, just holding, and then slowly transition yourself down. So maybe then you move to a counter, then maybe you move to the floor and you're on your hands, maybe, and then have a towel underneath your knees, then transition from your hands up to your toes. But those are 3 exercises that you could start kind of where you felt was a better fit. And then you could, again, make them a little bit easier, or you could make them a little bit harder. But those are kind of foundational exercises too that most of us are familiar with, that don't necessarily have a lot of technique involved, where you may feel comfortable doing them.
Great. That's what I need, where no technique required. The next question I have is, what's some good basic footwear that I can start my home exercises in?
Oh,
Workout.
good questions. When we talk about footwear, we are looking for something designed for physical activity. So it's so easy when we're working out at home to just put on those slippers or those sneakers we've had for 10 years, but truly get a pair of shoes that are designed for physical activity, along with then replacing them on a regular basis. Footwear is not designed to last forever. So if you're really thinking, I need that support in my footwear, I would recommend meeting with an expert, whether that's Shields, Fleet Feet, Lincoln Running Company, or in this area, a Dick's Sporting Goods, something along those lines, meeting with somebody who's able to fit you and give you a recommendation of shoe that's best for you. But again, steer kind of away from those shoes that are not designed for physical activity.
That makes total sense. It does. Okay. All right. If I'm understanding this one right, I want to use the stairs in my house and the laps on my ground floor and basement. I want to use the stairs in my home and walk laps as my workout. Do I need to warm up first? And is this a good home workout?
So I'm going to start with the second question. I think that's a great start. Again, depending on your unique situation, it may be a little bit too hard, or it may be a little bit too easy. But I would start with, okay, what's realistic for me? Again, kind of going back to that safety planning. Let's be specific. Are we going to do 1 lap? Are we going to do multiple laps? Because usually by the time we say that we're tired, we really are really tired. There is what is known as DOMS, DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness. And essentially it's, you may not be sore until 24 to 72 hours after. So you may feel great after doing your workout. And then in 48 hours, you might be like, oh my gosh, my arms are so sore. Yes, we've all kind of done that before. So I would say kind of start small and then move from there. Again, with the warm up is, again, so we don't go from 0 to 100. So if it's okay, I'm going to do my ground floor, just easy walking, and then go do the stairs, and then another ground floor walking, and that one's a little bit faster. That would make sense. Again, The warm-up is ultimately to get you from 0 to 100, not in 2 seconds, but over the course of some time. So that 5 and 5 rule is kind of a recommendation because, again, many of us don't necessarily know what we're supposed to do for the warm-up. But I wouldn't just say, okay, I'm going to go do the stairs and then walk my laps, and then I'm just going to go back in and sit. Again, without that cool down and warm up, you're just kind of going as fast as you can, and then you're hitting the brakes really hard. So hopefully that kind of answered the question in a nutshell.
That makes sense to me. And I don't see anybody saying, no, wait, that wasn't what I was asking. So we're good.
Okay.
And Lori wants to know how you, Sam, feel about pull my navel to spine while sitting on a chair, on a straight chair, 3 inches away from the back to strengthen core and improve posture.
I think it's a good part of a well-rounded workout. And the reason I say that is because you could eat a chocolate bar every day and that's all you ate and it wouldn't be good for you, but you could also eat an apple a day and that's all you ate and it wouldn't be good for you. We kind of have to have a little bit of everything. And so something like that is a great addition into a workout. Again, as long as it's not the only thing that we're doing. So if that's part of a workout, that's great. That's perfect. It's working a lot of different muscles. And again, can be part of something, but to just do that may not be enough or may be overusing the same muscles too often.
Perfect. That's great. Well, I don't see anything else here.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question? No.
Could you
Okay.
show the heart rate screenshot again?
Yeah, I can kick back over there. So I'm going to show you the very first heart rate screen. This one. Is this the one that you're referring to?
Sounds like it.
Yes.
Okay, great. And again, you'll all have a recording of this presentation once we get it cleaned up and out to you. So perfect. Any other questions? No. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just been incredible, as always. I know we've all learned a great deal, and we will approach that home workout with renewed motivation now. Thanks to you. Folks, thank you for joining us, for giving up a slice of your Tuesday afternoon. You'll want to join us in 2 weeks. It's on the 31st for Tune Up Your Nutrition with Sam's friend and mine, our favorite Hy-Vee dietitian, Jennifer Donovan. So thanks so much again. Be well, everyone. Bye-bye.